Alrighty, we should be live, I hope. Best I can tell, I am. I have doubts at times, but it does look like we are working on YouTube. So let's see here. We have a few people in the studio. YouTube says 3 and StreamYard says 2. Welcome to everybody. I haven't done any regular videos for, I think, close to a week, so I thought I'd do a live one and get caught up. I actually recorded a couple of videos and they sucked rocks. I couldn't even bring myself to edit them, much less upload them, so running a little behind, but hey, that gives us lots to talk about tonight. I do hope people will ask some questions. A few things have been going on. It is not necessarily an exciting spring, but it has been an interesting spring, and I think a good spring for both football and basketball. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen it yet. I just caught it before I signed on here. I guess Bob Huggins was asked about the phone call from DeVries, and he said that they just told DeVries it was not a good time for him, and then went on to tell the interviewer how, he'd been in southern West Virginia, northern West Virginia, trying to help the people. So he wants to tell us how good he is, but he evidently wouldn't say squat to DeVries, not even good luck. So once again, I think Huggins has told us things about him that don't match the image that some people have of him. Anyway, might talk a little more basketball here later, but it's not the main subject. Couple of things I'll get into. One is this whole America's Conference. Well, I don't want to say idea, or I don't want to say name, but idea, because I think the concept is a good one. The name would be a bad one. Not that the Big 12 is thinking about it, but anytime somebody claims to be America's whatever, it just annoys people. And also want to talk about culture, which is where I'll start. Culture has been talked about ever since Brown took over. It has not been talked about often until the last month or so. And it's still not being, well, it's not being talked about. It's being talked around. Because they just Brown is developing culture at West Virginia, and they act like culture only has one meaning or something. What we've been seeing lately in a lot of the player and coach interviews is more definition of what culture they are building. And there's the first thing, because culture can be intentional. And intentional, of course, is one of Brown's favorite words. Or it can be unintentional. Under Holgorsen, it was entirely unintentional. He did not try to build any type of culture, because culture is not an X's and O's sort of thing. It's not numbers. It's closer to the rah-rah stuff that Holgorsen doesn't believe in. Which may be why his teams had this tendency to fade. So Brown is building a specific kind of culture. And if you listen to him talk about the kind of player he wants and how he defines what it means to be a West Virginian or a Mountaineer, in the better senses of those terms, it's things like hard work, strength, strain, and integrity. and all of the things that go with that. That's the culture they're building. Guys who work hard, guys who strain, guys who, when they give you their word, they keep it. The kind of friend that if you call and say, I need help, first they say yes, then they say, what do you need? And of course, those friends are not common. But thing is, first, you don't get culture automatically just by having those players. It is something that has to be built, and you can have a team of all the right players, but it doesn't become culture until it's in the air. When a new guy comes in and knows how things are without being told, when he works harder and maybe doesn't even know why, it's just that is the way it is at West Virginia. Now, last year, I think we had it mostly established. It seems to be this year fully established. And you saw that in interview with Hubbard. And if you have not watched Hubbard's interview on Three Guys Before the Game, you got to go watch it. The guy is fun. If you're not a fan, you will be after you watch the interview. One of the things he mentioned was getting rid of the energy vampires, the guys who complain, the guys who don't work as hard. He said when he got there, the offensive line worked, but you kind of had to make them work. Now it's competition to see who gets there earliest, who works the hardest. And that is still around even though Frazier is gone. It will still be around when Hubbard and Milam are gone. Nestor's gone. So culture stays. Once it's established, it's not just the players. It is a thing of its own. Like I say, it is in the air they breathe when they come in. If you get a good, strong culture established, that does win games. Brown talked about it in his most recent interview. When talent and experience, quality, all of those things are pretty much even, the guys who want it more, which is going to mean they worked harder, they prepared more, they strained more, those are the guys most likely to win. That's the culture. So you can have equal talent, better culture. That can win the game. We saw it this past season, those first games when it was just grit and grind. It took something special to win those games that way. Now, I don't think we'll be grit and grind. We'll do that when we have to. We'll be able to do it, but it is going to be not just the way the offense was later, but more so. It is going to be, both run and pass. It's going to be a pretty wide open offense, I think. Well, crap. Still only got 2 people watching. I was kind of hoping for more than that by now. Well, of the 3 of you who are in here, do you have a particular question or thoughts about what's going on? I know a lot of these things have been covered. Tues did his culture video, and folks have talked about some of the different players, but if you are positions and that sort of thing, if you want my input, hey, you can ask the same question. It doesn't have to be new. That America's Conference idea, Josh Pate brought it up recently, but it actually goes back at least 3 years. Somebody used it on the grounds that the Big 12 looks to be the most even conference. Parity is the word. So if you're having good football games, week in, week out, and not just one good football game, but 4, 5, 6, 7 good, close games, that can get good word of mouth, which should result in better TV ratings. So if it does become the conference people like because the games are good, could have something. But I don't think it happens on its own. I think the Big 12 does need to promote it. But how? Some people don't want to change the name Big 12. It is now, of course, a ignorant, stupid, nonsensical name. But some people want to keep it, particularly teams who are in the Midwest and are traditional Big 12 teams. Surprise, surprise. I don't think Utah, Arizona, and those guys are particularly tied to the name Big 12. But I have not come up with a better conference name. If anybody has one, feel free to put it in the comments. Would be nice to see a comment or two here. As far as what's going on in the spring camp, Saturday was family day, and I was hoping we would get more coverage. We got less. I haven't seen much of anything out of that day. We did not get any press conferences. So we did have press conferences on Monday, and it is mostly more of the same so far. We had Coach Jackson and Coach Marshall. So, of course, we got a little more detail in terms of the defensive line and the receivers, but really nothing. Well, now there was one new thing. It seems that Preston Fox has upped his game. He's been known as a hard worker since he got here, but he's worked harder. Marshall said he is taking care of his body better. So, of course, he's had a couple of injuries, and the way he makes some circus catches does create the possibilities for injuries. But faster, stronger, not going to get knocked off of his line, and that was, people talk about the receivers not getting open, not getting separation, but then the coaches talk about guys like Clement having this natural ability to get separation. So, is somebody wrong, or is there something else? And I think that something else is getting knocked off their line, because pretty much everybody last year was too small. Carter was not too small, but they had to put him in the slot to keep him from getting stuck at the line. So I do think we'll see better separation because we have stronger receivers. The standout continues to be Bray. Marshall raved. They say the players are calling him Optimus Prime. If you're going to get a nickname from the team, that's not a bad one to have. Clement, everybody. I did not hear even a mediocre word about any of the receivers so far. Pushing Horton. because, as Marshall said, he asked him, do you want to be a one-trick pony and just run downfield every time? And that's Horton's decision. He made some good plays last year, not enough. Made some bad plays too, and of course was injured. But that speed has to be used to a purpose. I still consider Horton to be one of the potentials to hit the portal. He and Williams, they say they're doing better, but how well will they do? Because that room is crowded. As guys get better, you have the same number of players, but competition for playing time gets tougher. Sticking with the defense, interesting thing from Jackson. Sticking with the defense, I was just talking about offense. There should have been some caffeine in this mug. On the defensive side of things, with Sean Martin, he's not only looking better, but Jackson said if I passed out, in practice, Sean Martin could take over the coaching. Like to hear that, especially about your veterans. You don't want veterans who couldn't do it. I also, Eddie Vesterinen has gotten used to the culture enough that he's now sort of the class clown, but also a player coach. So we definitely have older guys taking on the kind of leadership roles, that you need to form and maintain a good culture. This has not been a lively group. It has not been a large group. 3 people. I had been getting over my depression issues, but it is not helping. I'll run through a couple of things real quickly and see if anybody shows up. Running back room, I still consider the competition between Anderson and Ash to be the key to the spring. Coaches have made it clear what Anderson has to do, but I am not hearing coaches say that he's doing it. They say he had a great winter, but I'm not hearing him listed as one of the standouts in practice. Hearing a lot more about Ash, which may be an attempt to motivate Anderson, or it may be that Ash is simply doing that much better than Anderson. Let's see. We're up now to 4 commitments for 2025, and Saturday we may pick up another one. Offensive line commitment. The guy has set his his reveal for Saturday, I believe. And things changed up right after a visit to West Virginia. So word is we are considered the odds-on favorite to pick up another offensive line commitment from one of the big targets. So. And big target is, defense and offense. The lines are getting bigger. In part, that's intent, but it's also because we can get guys now that we want, guys who are, near or at the top of the target list are now committing instead of getting the guys who are 3, 4, 5, 6 down on your target list. Because we're also in contention for a tight end transfer, FCS transfer, but he has offers from a crap load of top Power 2 conferences. And I just dropped my notes. And we're still at 3 people. So guys, We haven't gotten a comment here other than Rick Shaver's amen. I'm not sure what that was in reference to. So since it doesn't seem that anybody really gives a crap about the broadcast, I am just going to shut it down and go do other things. Kickoff punt returners. Okay, let me show this here. Last Brown said they have not worked on kickoff returns as yet, so that's still going to be wide open. Of course, we've got a couple of freshmen who will get a shot back there. White will get a shot. Fox will probably continue to get a shot there. Gonna have to wait and see who has the knack, particularly if we can get the blocking better. We have not had anybody who has a knack on kickoff returns for a long time. So I'm not even going to guess who's going to win the game. Shoot, Ash, may be back there. Punt return, it looks like it is Preston Fox's role to lose. He did well last year, and he is supposed to be better this year. So barring injury, I would expect Fox to be the punt returner. I think Aiden Garnes could end up back there if needed. Hollis, I think, would be a possibility. We have a number of defensive backs who are faster than what we've had in the past, although Beanie Bishop certainly had the speed. Trying to think, I know there are some freshmen who are considered possibilities on special teams, but none of them are currently in camp. So can't really make good predictions. But I do thank you for the question. Field position has not, we've been up and down in terms of field position, but we have not done it as well as we could. And that includes the, kick coverage teams who have missed a number of good opportunities. I know a lot of people want Brown to just kick it into the end zone every time. I'm not for that. I think winning on kickoff can be critical, not just for field position, but the psychological edge. You stop the guy on the 15, 16-yard line, and you're psyched, and they are bummed. That's what you want. You want to keep the other guy as bummed as possible. But I don't think we may not know about kickoff returns until close to the beginning of the season, particularly since there are a number of contenders who aren't on campus yet. All right, do we have other questions? Oh, hey, we're up to 6 people. Well, I guess that's enough incentive to pick up my notes and see. Just people kind of later than I expected. Consistent things we're hearing. Corey McIntyre is talked about in pretty much every press conference, whether it's one of the players talking or the coaches. I do not expect him to start, but it looks like he'll get quality playing time. Could play any of the 3 line positions, but right now would be, Coach Jackson said most of his time likely to be behind Vestorinen, which is a bit of a surprise. I think most people have been putting him at the nose, but I'm going to take Jackson's word for it over mine or any of the other fans or media. Consistently, they're saying Trotter and Lathan look fully recovered. Hubbard said, we are loaded at linebacker, which, we've been saying in the media, but it's nice to hear the players say it. Trotter's going to be an animal. Got a couple of the defensive backs who are fast enough to, cover Horton. So this is a good thing. Speaking again of culture, with Aiden Nelson, when he was with the basketball team, the football coaches pretty much assumed that he would miss some of the meetings and workouts for football. They considered that the acceptable norm. He did not miss a single meeting or workout, including when the basketball team got home late and the meeting was early in the morning. I don't know how Nelson will work out as a player, but he is a guy you want on your team. And, I don't know how many of you actually watch the full interviews with the coaches and players on YouTube, but if you don't, man, you should. Some of it's boring. Some of them are not the world's best speakers, but you do pick up some neat nuggets. Let's see. Yeah, I found it interesting. Shadon Brown was specified with Anthony Wilson that he needs to improve coverage. Hey, every fan and media person said that. But specifically talking about his body position and leverage, because he wasn't asked to do that at Georgia Southern. And that's, of course, that's part of why you want to get guys with multiple years left, is so you can get the improved version. And that's what we should see with Wilson this year. Last year he was good with shortages in coverage. We fixed the coverage issues, and we got something special. And I think we should be able to help fix some of those things. Now, some people made a big deal out of the fact that Shadon Brown just referred to Dante Wright as the former safeties coach or things like that. I am not convinced that's a big deal. I do suspect Brown likes having all the defensive backs in one room. He said, that's what he has done in the past. So when Coach Brown came to him and said, would you like to do the whole room? He said, yeah. Because that, he's done that at the Power 5 level. He likes it that way. And it's not just, communication. It's not just saying the same thing, but the same language, saying things the same way. You do get more consistency. So far, the players like it. I don't think it indicates any issues between Shadon Brown and Dante Wright. I may be wrong, but I don't see any reason to read a lot into that. The offensive line, of course, center remains the big question. Yates is not the same kind of player as Frazier. Now, Moore says Yates runs better. Some fans don't believe it. I'll wait and see. But Yates and Hubbard, have indicated that it will be a more open offense. And Hubbard, partly because it's going to be a faster line. That would be interesting. We were not consistent on some of the wide runs. Cutting off the edge didn't always happen. So we may or may not be as good running up the middle, but if we're better on the edge, again, I still think that the line overall may work out better than last year. And Yates does not have to be the second coming of Frazier. For that matter, Altoona doesn't have to be the second coming of Frazier. Frazier was Frazier, Yates is Yates, Altoona will be Altoona. Livingston will be Livingston. They just have to do their job. Let's see. And Livingston is doing well. Moore actually wants 4 guys ready who could play center if need be, which starts with snapping. He says every single lineman, they try them snapping. If they can snap, they work them at center. Guys like Rimac, nope, can't snap, not a center. But the level of preparation continues to grow. As you know, we've built depth. Now we can work on a lot of additional things. Weedman is currently taking Remac's spot at left guard with Hamilton behind him, which means overall Hamilton is 3rd on the depth chart. That doesn't look good to me. I think he's going to have to work his way into 2nd on the depth chart, or he'll probably take off. Still consider him one of my top 10 who potential to leave. Nick Cray keeps coming up. He's getting mentioned a lot. And somebody asked who would be the Malone for this year, who could move all over. Cray was an immediate response, including tight end at 305 pounds. So, and I get the impression that Cray moves better than Malone. So, we'll likely see a fair amount of Cray this year, and he probably has the lead on a starting spot in 25, if we want to look that far ahead. Word is still good on Carrico. Brown says he is hungry, which is another thing that he looks for in players. I found it interesting. Shadon Brown specified that when he goes to kneel with a player, hey, this is the guy we've been looking at. We want him. And Neil Brown has the final say. He says no a lot more than he says yes. Because he's focused all of the coaches are focused on culture. It doesn't work if they're not. But Neil Brown, as the head guy, has to focus on it more, have an awareness of how the guy fits with the team and the room, or the room and the team, both pictures. And Shadon Brown specified not taking anybody who's been a cancer on another team. I think that was a reference to some previous players, because I think they took some chances because in the past they felt they had to. It was, the risk, the potential for reward was important. So I think they took some guys that maybe they wish they, I'm sure they wish they hadn't once things went down the way they did. But I get the impression that being a lot more picky, and they can be, pickier because the rest of the team is stronger, the culture is stronger. You're not just looking to fill a ton of spots, and you have a team and culture that makes people, want to play here. And that matters. Screw NIL. There's still a difference between guys wanting to play here or not. And Guys want to play here. We're going to see the same thing in basketball. It's not showing so much yet because we're having trouble getting coaches and players in place, but it will show. Thanks, Timothy Green. I do appreciate that. Of course, call it as I see it, but that does not guarantee that I'm seeing it all that clearly with or without my glasses. But I think there are some good guesses. If you're wondering, Bosley is still behind Malone, but doing well, working on his strength. We heard a couple of coaches and players say that the physicality is higher. Now, I think in part that's because they feel like they can be more physical. They don't have to start from scratch as much and aren't as worried about losing players because there's some depth. But I think it is also an attitude. So those of you who want to see more hitting, that's what the players are talking about. They say a lot of those defensive backs out there like to hit. Jennings likes to hit. We haven't had the opportunity to do that as much. We've had to play safer defenses. For those of you who want to see more active defense, we've been working towards it. I think it is going to happen this year. Overall, depth is good. One of the questions in the press conference was for Coach Jackson, is the depth as good as it was last year where they could rotate in 9 or 10 guys? Not yet, but getting there. And if you look, because Vesterinen, Martin, and Mulva, I think would be the starters right now. But Hammond, or Russell Hammond, is coming on strong. He's going to be playing a lot. So it will probably be Mulva getting 40 plays, followed by, Russell at 30, and then somebody else picking up 10 or so, depending on how many plays are run. We've got TJ Jackson, who can play either end, field or boundary. Just said, that McIntyre will be playing mostly behind Vesterinen, but can play all three spots. So he might be the third guy at nose. Redwood will be coming back from injury. I know I'm forgetting guys, but man, that's already. We have guys who are probably going to be, third on the depth chart this year who could have started 3 or 4 years ago, much less 6 or 7 years ago. Offensive line. Yates is going to be good at center. Livingston, they say he's doing well, still needs to build strength. So he's probably going to be the backup. How much of a drop that would be by fall, don't know. But then we've got Milam, and he's backed up by Johnny Williams, who is doing well this spring. Remack's out, but Weedman is his backup and doing well. Mo Hamilton, number 3 there, which is not that's a pretty good number 3. I think right guard is still a question. Hubbard should be better. I think Cray is number 2 at right guard. That's he's young, but man, word is he's going to be and is becoming quickly very good. Then Malone and Bosley out at right tackle. So your 2 deep is, I think, better than the 2 deep last year. Of course, last year we saw Malone coming in, you know, just about any place. We did not really oh, and Biggs. Biggs is injured right now. But, you know, he's going to be pushing for a number 2 spot anywhere along the line. And I think we'll see more, you know, whoever is listed as the number 2 is more likely to play this year. You know, rather than just having a number 6 guy who comes in everywhere. So I think that puts us in a lot better position on the offensive line than we were last year. And of course, last year the offensive line wasn't exactly bad. I mean, overall, I think every position on the team, or every room on the team, is deeper this year than last year. I think, with the exception of center, I think the starter at every position may be better than the starter at that position last year. And that includes the returning guys, because, I mean, I expect every veteran on the team, every starter from last year, to be better this year than they were last year. And based on the interviews, they expect to be better. They are determined to be better. They understand that they must and should be better. And that is something that Brown has preached since he got here. How good you are now is not the point. You have to be better. You know, and I think that was a point of contention for a lot of players. Some who stayed, some who left. But I think a lot of players did not like the idea of being told that they were good and had to work hard to get better. You know, you've got certain egos that aren't going to handle that well. And they left. And yeah, I have a few players in mind that I suspect that was the case. And not a great deal of evidence, but just a feeling. So I won't name names. But, you know, I am excited about this team. I've said it in video after video. And I'm glad that more of the media is starting to catch up. You know? National media is still mostly lagging behind. I think one of the betting places has us like 10th, you know, down the line as chances to win the conference. I would put us in the top 3. And I might lean towards number 1, but I don't know. I don't follow the other teams, and I'll admit that. But I think more of the West Virginia media, and especially, you know, this group of YouTube, I don't know what to call us, but I think, you know, the guys on YouTube are seeing the team in a much more positive light than they were, well, pretty much any time last year. Some of them are resisting it. They don't want to see the team in a more positive light. They're afraid that it won't work out. But you are starting to see a lot more upbeat. And yes, I pretty much say, nice to have you on board the wagon. Glad you have caught up. And thank you, people, for saying, you know, to this year what I was saying last year. I think, well, of course, what happens between now and fall? I think if things come together the way I expect them to, we will beat Penn State. I think Penn State will have to play a near perfect game to win. Now, last year, West Virginia would have had to play a near perfect game to win, and from the beginning they didn't. They played some really good stretches, but not what you would call anywhere near perfect. I think, we'll take advantage of any mistakes that Penn State makes. I think we'll force mistakes. It actually was, people don't want to look at it this way, but it was a very close game last year, right up until the last, 3 minutes. The first touchdown was a slip by Burks and missing the ball by 6 inches on a dive that he wouldn't have had to make if he hadn't slipped, trying to, make a cut. Of course, he wouldn't have had to make the, hard cut if he had been in better position to start with. But that's how close the game really was. And then, Wilson Lamp just not being able to play in a game the way he evidently did in practice. Once we cleaned that up a couple of games later, the defense was actually rather good until Lathan got hurt, which opened up issues for the safeties because the linebackers weren't covering. Okay. Do we have more questions? Anybody want to talk basketball? I am looking forward to the basketball season, and I do think, a lot of people are worried because, DeVries only has one assistant coach. We've got 2 players who've left via the portal. The one commitment has, decided to leave. We've signed 1 high school commitment, 1 transfer, Tucker, DeVries, and I think looking at least 1 more from Drake, maybe 2. But I do think that will come together soon. I think it will come together quickly when it does. I do not know if any of this is still a leftover from the Huggins effect. Trying to sort out who will play hard and not necessarily, be affected by Huggins. I don't know if they are still considering any of the former assistants. Again, that's going to depend on whether or not they, are willing to, say no to Huggins. But I think that's going to come together here in probably within the next couple of weeks. And I say it will probably all happen within a matter of a few days when it does. Linda, I agree. I think I said something to that effect couple of months ago when I was talking about the defense. There were a couple of specific things that caused problems last year. One being Lathan's injury, leaving us, thin at linebacker. Obviously, we've corrected that in a big way. And I think whoever takes Koba's spot will be better than Koba because Koba was a hit or miss. He was an all-or-nothing linebacker and really just a run coverage linebacker. So I really liked watching him play, but man, when he missed, he missed. And I do not think we will have that limitation this year. And I think the defensive line will be better, more consistent. I think Mike Lockhart had become a weak spot. Mulba, I think, wants it more than Lockhart did, at least so far. Lockhart wanted it until he had it, and then he didn't want to keep getting better, as far as I could tell. We have blitzing ability that we didn't have before. I think Bradley will be a lot better than last year. I am hoping to see a couple more circus interceptions. He's got the build that could just allow him to do some wonderful things, which McLaren had but didn't use all that well. And obviously the defensive backfield, oh man, it's so much better. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying. And I think we will probably be a little bit more than fine. I don't think we're going to win the conference, though I do think we'll make a run in the conference tournament. Yeah, and of course that's what you want. It's not so much how good a player is, it is how good the team is. And as people pointed out this past year, it's easier to put together 13 guys than it is to put together 85 for a football team. Robert, I BS well. Always have. Got me through, graduate school. But yeah, I think I do manage to come up with some good stuff as I'm BSing. Actually did have a person from Ireland tell me I had the gift of gab. And if anybody's going to know, it should be somebody from Ireland. I particularly appreciated that comment. Unfortunately, the professor of that class didn't feel quite the same way. Yeah, the clock is ticking, but I don't think it's a problem. I think DeVries is very good at what he does. Now Baker is likely not heavily involved in this part of the process. Assistants are usually left up to the head coach, but I do suspect Baker is working in the background over the issues of still putting out fires from last year. And that may be affecting things. But as you may have noticed, things don't get out a lot from this group. Baker does not leak things. And it appears DeVries does not leak things. So we could have, coaches almost signed, or signed, in intent, not yet quite in fact, and we wouldn't know it. The DeVries deal was made in, it was pretty much agreed on long before we heard, it was Baker's intent. He went after the guy he wanted. He got him. And then he waited until the right moment to do all of the formal stuff. Yeah, I do not know diddly about, who is or isn't good out of the choices out there. But I have faith that the choices made will be good ones. Yeah. And, good sayings never die, do they? Doesn't apply probably quite as much to the hiring, but it certainly can. And it's not that things were necessarily, wild and badly run before, but there's a tightness to things, when they come together quickly and generally well. People fussed over how Baker handled the situation when Huggins was asked to resign, forced to resign, given a choice to resign. But it's easy to say should do this, do that, but the reality of the situation was a royal pain. It was a mess. I do not think there was a better way to handle it in reality. In theory, sure, theory is easy. Making things happen. And Eilert never had a chance under the circumstances. I think he was a sacrificial lamb. I think Baker knew it, and I suspect he told Eilert before offering him the job. Yeah, I've said this. I mean, I did a whole video apologizing to Ren Baker. When he was hired, I expected the worst. Oh man, I did not think we had a prayer of getting anybody who was going to do anything except what a couple of specific power brokers told him to do. Well, if that's what he's doing, the power brokers are giving pretty good advice. Better than I would expect from them. But yeah, Baker seems to be as authentic a person as you're going to find, which is what makes him a perfect match with Brown, and I suspect a perfect match with DeVries, possibly with Kellogg. I mean, if you look at not just the ability, but the character of the athletic department and coaching staff right now, it is amazing, and they're all relatively young. If we can keep these guys, for 10 years, 10 years would be great. I'd like 20. We had Don Nehlen for about 20 years. Can you imagine having every major sport coached by a Nehlen quality person for 20 years at the same time? Oh man, I should be able to fantasize about other things, but I'm at an age now where this is what matters. I have not a clue about that, Charles. I have not followed anything about national sponsorships for any team. Certainly don't want Tesla. I don't think I don't think Baker would be willing to do a deal with Tesla for the same grounds, for how he hires people. That would be a problem. Finding a national corporate sponsor who has the same ethical standards as Baker and the coaching staff would be an enormous task. Of course, I don't know, it would probably be the university president and the board of regents who would make the actual decision. I don't know if Baker would even be asked to sign off on it or not. There may be discussions, but that is a discussion I'd like to be able to eavesdrop on. I am not fond of the average corporation. If you just study history going back to the Charles Dickens novels. Okay. Well, hey, guys, we've talked for just about an hour. We're at 11 people. So we got some more comments or questions going. I don't think there was anything else in basketball that I particularly had in mind. I will repeat for those who have come in recently and may not have seen it. There is a Twitter video when Bob Huggins is asked about his phone call from DeVries, and it sounds like he pretty much blew off DeVries, told him that it was a bad time for him, and then told the interviewer all the good things that he had been trying to do for the state. And I don't know if it was bad lighting or what, but Huggins did not look as good in this interview as he did the KDKA interview, which of course has professional lighting. So, but things may be, the stress may be reaching Huggins. Kind of what I was afraid of if he ever got a coaching position. But not getting a coaching position is going to put stress on him too. And in a number of ways, he is not in the right health to be dealing with stress. Another comment I found interesting from Coach Moore, because when he was talking about the shift in culture, the role that Frazier played, he said even the veterans at the time, like Barrett, were better for having a year with Frazier. Of course, that would apply to the ones who saw Frazier and took it as a challenge, as opposed to the guys who saw Frazier and just said, he's a freshman, he'll learn. But, I say we have the culture, I think, in place to the point now that it will stay, because culture is much like depth. You have to have it so that it just keeps coming year after year. You don't want these gaps that we have had in the past where we'll have a good team, bad team, good team, bad team. Put together a good defense and not so much offense. I think we are at that point now where we will be consistently good. Huggins has always done great money raising. People love him. I think it's probably what he should stick to. I don't think he's healthy enough to go back into coaching. And I really don't think he should keep giving interviews, because he does not he doesn't give the impression that I think he wants to give. But he could do anything and people would still donate money if he asked. That's interesting thing. Neil Brown was saying, he was asked, will we sign more transfers? Brown, it's up to the young players. If the redshirt freshmen and such come through during spring to indicate that they can do the job in the fall, won't need to sign anybody unless it's what he called a luxury pick. But he was not committing to whether or not those players were leaning that way or not. The assistant position, the position coaches, they're saying positive things. The Jackson brothers have both put on about 10 pounds. They're stronger, they're faster, they're catching on. Catching on at corner faster than safety, because safety is a lot more complicated. You have to know a lot more things to be able to make the calls at safety than you do just to have to listen and execute at cornerback. And pleased with Nelson overall, and just generally, positive things about just about everybody. Did also note that Beanie Bishop is actively helping in recruiting, was on campus recently, takes messages and calls from guys who are asking about the program. So it's not just Beanie Bishop is a showcase where coaches can say, look what happened with him. He is actively participating. He always indicated that he was a complete buy-in with the program. I think he truly became a mountaineer, and that's what he's showing. Man, his speed at the pro day should get him some interest. He's not tall, but man, he's a player. He's a player. Yeah. Huggins is 70 years old. History of heart problems. He's lost weight, but he is still way overweight. And he has a history of alcohol trouble. He was not coaching well for the last several years. His press conferences that I watched were problematic. I think if he got a coaching job, he would get off to a fast start and then crash, possibly literally. He could easily work himself into another heart attack. There is some concern over, like I say, the stress seems to me that may be getting to him some more. Hopefully he will, whatever makes him happy outside of coaching basketball, I think that's what he should commit to doing. And just a full commitment and just enjoy it. If he doesn't, I think his health will crash. I do not wish that upon him. But, you can kind of see it in the interviews. Okay. I do appreciate the folks who have come by and asked questions, made comments. It gives me a chance to talk. I think I said long ago that I once talked for 7.5 hours. That was with caffeine, and this has no caffeine and no alcohol. But that was also the last sip in the cup. So I think that symbolically means that the stream probably is ready to end. We've been here a little over an hour. Did not look like we were going to get that far. I forgot to say it earlier. I'll say it now before everybody's quite gone. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Make comments even if you're watching the YouTube repeat. Minimize the profanity. Please click the thumbs up and click the share button. Tell your friends we're here and get them to come look. As I do need all the help I can get, whether we are talking about subscribers or maybe some suggestions about my mentality. So, thanks to everybody. I'm going to click to end the stream, and I will see you guys more than likely later this week when we've had another press conference. So long.